Crack a hot cuppa and relax. It's Afternoon Karak with Aisha Al-Mazmi and Mikhail Atiyah
on Pulse 95.
So it appears that perhaps Universal is moving on with their plan to have a monster sort of universe happening, because they have cast the amazing Nicolas Cage as Dracula in the upcoming movie Renfield. The movie Renfield is basically based on the titular character, who is the vampire count's infamous acolyte and henchman, who is going to be played by none other than Nicholas Hoult. A lot of us are probably thinking, do we need another Dracula? The fact that Dracula is not technically the main character is a interesting perspective, even though Renfield is not a new character, it's not a new movie or new story. But I want to see, first of all, more Nicholas Hoult. I love him. And this just shows that this is truly the era or the comeback era for Nicolas Cage.
Oh my God. So Nicolas Cage is going to play as Dracula. And the second I read this story, it reminded me of his comedy horror film back in 1989, Vampire's Kiss. If you want to sit down with your friends and have the laugh of your life, you have to go watch Vampire's Kiss. Basically, the story behind this was that, he plays this Wall Street kind of guy. He's rich. He's a lady killer. But one day he gets bitten by a woman and he just believes that he's now a vampire.
I love that because it's satirical, but also the whole question of, did it actually happen? Did he actually turn into a vampire or not? But then obviously it's very satire and comedy.
Yeah.
So I love that. But what is interesting then, since we're speaking about comedy, is that another actress has also been cast in this movie. And this one was quite a surprise because she's not the type of actress you would kind of see or would think to see in those kind of movies. And that's Awkwafina. So this means one of two things. Either the movie is going to have elements of comedy in it, which, to be honest, I'm not sure if it's something that we would want, especially if they're going to create a sort of, a monster universe within Universal, the Monsterverse, as they would call it. Or this is going to be would be technically the second and a half serious role that she's going to be performing in, because she did perform in 2 movies. You can say Shang-Chi was half comedic, the way she was acting, but that doesn't mean that she previously hasn't acted in serious roles. It's just that we usually, connect Awkwafina with comedy. So I'm thinking, or at least I'm guessing, it's most likely going to be a drama series. It's going to be quite serious. And Awkwafina is going to show us her other side one more time.
So with Ryan Gosling as the star for the werewolf movie, and now we got Nicolas Cage for that Dracula movie.
And we had The Invisible Man.
The Invisible Man.
Yes.
Will there be a sequel or no? I'm not sure about that.
It might be, because if you remember the ending, even though it's been 2 years, guys, but we'll try not to ruin it.
Yeah.
It was kind of open-ended in the sense that, it's a bit of a spoiler, we're sorry about that. Who's going to be the next Invisible Man? Do you remember that? Vaguely, right?
Kinda, yeah.
Kind of. I mean, it's been quite a while. And the thing is, because the thing with the Monsterverse is that we've been promised this universe for quite a while. It's been kind of on and off, on and off, on and off. So we're not really sure what's happening within that realm. Universal has kind of greenlit and then backed off.
They're not interconnected, but at least they're still trying to make those monster movies.
So the fact that there are lots of gaps in between is Universal's fault. So if any of our memory or any of the, viewers' memory gets, just lost, we can't blame us, because again, it's just lots of gaps. It is a monsterverse, but not a universe the way that we have, known for the past couple of years, with the emergence of all these universes, such as the Godzilla one and the Marvel universe, the DC universe, and even the Spider-Man universe, and so on. Now let's move on to another universe, and that is the Game of Thrones universe, because according to this article, which I find kind of funny, and I'll explain why I find it funny, it says that George R.R. Martin reportedly begged HBO to do 10 seasons of Game of Thrones. If you know George, you know exactly why he asked for 10 seasons. Let's chat about that coming up next right here on the Afternoon Karak.
Pulse 95.
According to a report by Insider, apparently George R.R. Martin asked, or at least begged HBO to extend Game of Thrones to two more seasons, so 10 seasons instead of 8. And the reason why, even if it is true, there's two aspects to it. One, is it true or not? I believe that it could be true, but the other part of it, the reason why I find it hilarious, is that if you know George R.R. Martin, you'd know that he takes a very, 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 very long time to finish writing his books.
That's true.
So we already knew that around season 7, 8, the creators or the showrunners had to basically run on nothing. They were creating the show themselves. They didn't have any material to basically lean back on to use as a source. So that is one of the reasons why Game of Thrones season finale, or just the entirety of the 8th season, was sort of a mess, or even the 7th season, some people claim. So we know that they didn't have the material. So according to this, that if he had more time, he would have been able to finish it off. And then everybody would have had a more satisfactory ending to the entirety of the season, because it would be based on the actual author's vision. But we also know.
Yeah. Well, here's the
thing. I'm sorry to cut you off.
God.
Season 8 ended in 2019, right?
I think so.
2019. I know it's like a...
This was right around the time when our show kind of started.
Yes,
yeah, Game of Thrones was big.
And I recall that everybody's trying to forget it, so I don't blame you if you forget what year it is, okay? What year it happened. Okay, so if it's 10 seasons, it means that it would have possibly come out between 2020 and 2022. If you take into consideration that there's going to be a pandemic, or they wouldn't know, and they would start shooting sometime end of 2019, beginning of 2020, etc., on and off. Let's say even we can extend it to 2023.
Yeah.
Do you think that George R.R. Martin would have finished the books by 2023?
I highly doubt it.
Exactly. That's the reason why, no matter how much he had begged, I don't think it was relevant. Neither would it have fixed the ending of Game of Thrones. I feel like maybe that would have made it worse, because it would have given them more opportunity to even mess it up more.
I don't think that's entirely the case. I appreciate the effort that he went through. He would fly all the way to New York to have lunch with the former CEO of HBO and try to try to just pitch the idea that, guys, we need a few more seasons to flush out these story arcs, just to give it a more satisfactory ending to it. But like you said, it would have taken the show would have dragged on maybe till now. We would have still been waiting for season 9 and 10 to come out.
But not only that, we would have dragged on the story, because here's the irony of it, is that George, according to, basically, this is not George actually saying it, this is through another source, but basically it's based on George's agent Paul Haas. He's saying that George loves David Benioff and Daniel Weiss. He loves them, but he realized around season 5 that they were not following his template. Again, understood, rightfully so. You would get upset, especially since if you wanted your story to be followed to the T, I get it, understand that. But at the same time, you were not giving them a story around that time. They were running out of material. There was only so much they can do if they wanted to extend this show and end it off. I wouldn't say, okay, let's say appropriately, based on what they can come up with around that time. Because obviously, I know that they're not going to write the scripts 4 or 5 years ahead, but then since it's a long story, they were probably working on it, at least a draft or so, way ahead of that. So they kind of had somewhat of an idea of what their trajectory is going to be if George does not give them any sort of material. So honestly, it would have made absolutely no sense, unless he was the type who can write fast, which we know he isn't. I mean, we've been waiting for the last book for how long now?
It's been since 2011.
Exactly. So it's not like it would have been enough or that it worked out, to be honest. Again, it would have been...
But honestly, I think I would have chosen this option instead of what we got back in 2019.
Here, okay, let me explain it in another way.
Okay.
The last season of The Office.
didn't like it.
Exactly, wasn't necessary.
It was not. I felt like once Michael left season 7, spoilers, I think the show kind of should have ended there.
Exactly. So it's the same thing. It's like when they add a season or 2 or 3 or 4, just to kind of let's stretch out the story. Let's see where it goes. This is the implication this was giving. Again, since we know he wouldn't have had the material ready, you guys would have still hated it. I can guarantee that. In another universe where you guys did get 10 seasons, you guys did not like it.
I suppose we'll never satisfy everyone. But just looking back, season 8 of Game of Thrones, and would we have liked another 2 more seasons? Honestly, I would have liked to see it happen, but there could have been the issue of it being dragged on for too long. But speaking of milking it, HBO isn't gonna stop here. We know that the House of Dragons, the prequel is coming out sometime next year.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. Hopefully they'll stick to the material, because that one's kind of completed from what I understand.
Kind of completed.
And until then, Winds of Winter. George, I know you got all the money, all the fame, but just let's get that book out, because I need to know what's going to happen next.
Exactly. And I don't know if you've heard of this, but according to another piece of story, it was saying that George has not revealed the ending of the book. I think it's because he hasn't written the end of the book. And it's not that he is keeping a secret. Listen, we love George. I'm not the biggest Game of Thrones fan, and I still love him. He's a great guy. He has a wide imagination. He is the man when it comes to fantasy, or one of the many great authors in the world of fantasy. So, contemporary fantasy. So I'm not saying that we hate him or we're bashing him because we dislike him. No, it's just that this is the truth. This is what is happening. And although we can't do much about it, but it is what it is. And we need to call him out a little bit. I know it sounds like we're bashing him every single time, but George, we love you very much, no matter what you do. We're going to be taking a short break, and our stories are going to continue after the sports headlines and so much more right here on the Afternoon Karak.
Pulse 95.
YouTuber Point Crow, who runs a channel featuring a range of Legend of Zelda-based content, basically is offering $10,000, a reward to anyone who can successfully create a multiplayer mod for the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Now, I already know Nintendo will be looking at that. It's like, excuse me? How is it? Wait, is this legal? Do we need to pull out our lawyers?
Here's the thing. It's a mod, and I get what you mean.
Yeah.
It's a gray area. Is Nintendo going to do something about it, or are they going to be smart like other studios and basically take those people and put them in their own team of developers so they can develop it?
But I know Nintendo. But I think despite that, the modding community, it never stopped them from achieving some really ambitious feats when it comes to modding. Think of it this, a multiplayer mode for a game that's strictly single player. It's been done before. I think Skyrim had a mod that took many years to develop to put a multiplayer, like a co-op version in it.
Yeah.
So apparently this guy is saying that the mod has to be done 2 months before the release of the upcoming Breath of the Wild sequel. So you probably have half a year, a little bit more than that to do it. And I can already tell this is not going to be easy.
Oh, no.
And some modders have pointed out that $10,000 would unlikely be enough to cover the hours needed to develop this professionally.
Most likely, because the thing is, the difference between Skyrim and Breath of the Wild is Skyrim is on PC.
Yeah.
Skyrim has been adapted for many, many consoles. So I feel like, again, I am not a developer, so I don't know much. From my understanding is that it's already...
Skyrim has a modding workshop.
Exactly. It gives there is some sort of base for them to kind of be a lot more creative and basically have most likely the ability to, or at least the flexibility to mod it in different ways and through different engines. But over here, when it comes to Breath of the Wild, it's only available on the Switch, which is limited already because it is a very small console in comparison to the PC, the PlayStation, even the PlayStation 4 or 5, and the Xbox. Again, whether it's the current gen or the previous gen. Yes, it is quite strong. We're not saying it isn't, but in terms of modability, it's still a new region to an extent, simply because I feel like, from what I understand, again, not a developer, so correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to modability, it's much harder to do that on the Switch simply because of how contained it is. It's in comparison to other consoles and whatnot. And like you said, there isn't much of a modding. There is, I think, a modding community within the world of Legend of Zelda, but I don't think it's as big and as expansive as, say, Red Dead Redemption or Skyrim, especially since those games have been out for quite a long time in comparison to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, even though Red Dead Redemption did come out around the same time. But again, that game is available on PC and on different consoles, so it's a completely different arena.
You know, for these guys, I won't be surprised that somebody will try to pull this off. It's definitely not for a solo modder out there, probably a team. But to imagine a multiplayer mode on Breath of the Wild would be pretty crazy, and I know it would make for some really, really cool content that people would love to see on YouTube. But until then, we're just gonna have to wait and see with these developers. Best of luck. I kind of hope he increases the prize money.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because like a lot of these modders said, 10,000 ain't gonna be enough.
Oh no, it definitely isn't. But he did lower one of the terms and conditions, as in he initially said that the game should be able to host up to 4 players. But now he said 2 players is more than enough, because obviously it's already difficult enough. It doesn't need to make it any more difficult. Good luck to everybody who is doing this, and I hope they manage to actually be successful. It'll be really, really cool to watch. Coming up next, we've got some Marvel news and some Bioshock 4 rumors. Let's talk about all of these coming up next right here on the Afternoon Karak.
This is Pulse 95.
Speculation, gossip, or hoax. Rumor has it.
I think one of the most anticipated games that have kind of been, we can say, in production hell, simply because they were kind of anticipated. People have speculated they were happening, but then nothing really came out of the actual creators or the studio for quite a while about them. But there has been some rumors that Bioshock 4 is actually happening, and some more leaks have been basically explaining or speculating exactly what to expect out of this game.
So Take-Two Interactive have confirmed a year ago roughly that yes, they are developing a new Bioshock, but it's not from the same main team, Irrational Games. They actually closed that studio after Bioshock 3. A new studio called Cloud Chamber stepped in and have been working on it for quite a while. And now there are rumors going around saying that this Bioshock 4 is titled, first off, Bioshock Isolation, and that it will be set in Antarctica.
Interesting.
And the place is going to be an Antarctic city called, and hopefully maybe you can correct me on this one, borealis. Borealis, yes.
Just like the Aurora Borealis.
Aurora Borealis.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is very fascinating. It's also set in the 1960s. Previous Bioshocks were set in 50s and the early 1900s. And one also important note that this rumor states is that this game will narratively connect with previous Bioshock games, which I don't know how you're gonna do that, because the story is so dense, you know, like especially when you're dealing with time and space manipulation and stuff like that. But I'm just thinking it makes a lot of sense, you know, because Bioshock has always dabbled with these like civilizations that are out of this world, figuratively and literally. We had a city up in the sky, we had one under the ocean, and now a city in the Arctic, up in the polar north polar areas. So I can already imagine what they could really do with this.
Antarctic, or is it the Arctic?
It's the Antarctic.
So South Pole.
Okay, yeah,
South
sorry.
Pole.
Arctic, Antarctic.
Arctic,
it's been a while.
Antarctic.
Okay, so Antarctic.
Antarctic.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, mixing it up there. It's been a while since I've taken a geography lesson.
It's okay. This is why I'm here to brush up some geography facts here and there. I mean, if we had Abdul Karim, would have been better than me. But yes, Arctic, Antarctic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's quite interesting, and I love that direction simply because When you think of those sort of post-apocalyptic kind of weird worlds, like such as you mentioned a city in the sky, a city underwater, you think about it and you're like, okay, we went up the sky, we went down underneath the water. Where else do we go? Has to be around in the land or underneath the ground, but still, how do we make it very different? Because I feel like maybe the next Bioshock can go all the way to the Earth's crust or mantle. I'm not sure. But for now, you're like, what else is sort of, if we tap into those conspiracy theories, I mean, if you think about them, a lot of them, they should talk about something in the sky, something underwater, something underground, and something in the North and South Pole. So it makes sense. You know, that whole moment, you're like, you guys are smart there.
There's also one aspect that I don't know what they might go for, because the city of Columbus, the city in the sky, was a very extreme religious city, whereas what was it called? Rapture, the city in the ocean, had the philosophy of basically free men. They're not tied to government or anything, and they just do their own thing. But that in itself has become apocalyptic. So now I'm thinking, what is the next sort of extreme philosophy, way of thinking that this isolated city might go for?
A bunch of scientists.
Who knows? Oh my God.
That's my guess. A bunch of scientists.
Anyway, this rumor also states that it's going to take place. It's going to be coming out as of next year, 2022. So I'm definitely excited for this. It's been a very long time since a Bioshock game has been out, and I can't. I'm definitely
question
excited.
is it for this gen consoles and previous gen consoles? Would there be backward compatibility? Because again, yes, I know more people have the PS5, but not a lot of people have the PS5.
With the chip shortage and next gen consoles still not being able, like, it's not still accessible to a lot of people. I think there will definitely be a cross play of some kind.
Yes, because from what I understand, yes, here in the UAE, you can still find the console. I actually saw it discounted. Not even kidding. Like, people are, maybe they're not that interested in buying it, or maybe saving it for later, or maybe some are not even aware that we have quite a bit of stock here in the UAE. But when it comes to the United States or the West, the amount of times I've seen like links go up, like official links, for example, IGN or GameStop kind of says, check out this restock happening on this day. And then I would check the link maybe an hour later and it's already sold out, like this. So same goes for the Xbox Series X. So this means that they would need to probably also release it on the PS4 for a lot of people to gain access to it, unless they're hinging on the fact that people will have the PS5 by the time this game comes out. Now, let's take one last break before we move on to... Actually, no, we've got two more breaks. Sorry about that, guys. We have something to hype you up about at the end of the hour. Cannot forget about that. And also hyping you up about some Marvel news. Somebody has been kinda confirmed to actually be part of the MCU. I am so excited to talk about that. Also, some She-Hulk news. Is it connected? Maybe. Let's chat about that. Coming up next right here on the Afternoon Karak.
This is Pulse 95.
It's been kind of confirmed, guys. If there's going to be a Daredevil, Charlie Cox is going to be reprising that role. Aisha, where are you getting this news from? From Kevin Feige himself. Yes, he actually said that. He announced that. He didn't really say we're getting Daredevil, but he said if we're getting Daredevil, if it's going to be Charlie. And it drove everybody crazy.
Because he acknowledges it, he knows.
I think he's kind of acknowledged it a while back. Like, he knows deep down that when it comes to this character in particular, everybody loved Charlie so much. They do not want to see anybody else do this role. And that is not the fact that nobody can do the role justice. It's just that he is so perfect for it that if you come up and replace him, it makes absolutely no sense. So does that mean... Again, this is my own speculation. Daredevil is confirmed for Spider-Man, maybe?
Perhaps.
Maybe.
There's still that rumor that he could be playing his Spider-Man's defense lawyer. And
maybe. Or another thing would be She-Hulk, because we do know that She-Hulk is around the area of New York. We do know that definitely her cousin, the Hulk, Bruce Banner himself, is going to be part of that series. But there are also some connections because She-Hulk herself is a lawyer. So does that mean that as a lawyer in New York, she's going to be bumping into none other than the Daredevil himself? it would make a lot of sense in my opinion.
I mean, make it work in any kind of way. You got the multiverse literally seeping out. This is the perfect time to put him in there and kind of make him narratively just fit in. And the fact that Kevin Feige acknowledges it, that means a lot of you guys who have all these petitions on change.org, you better update it very soon or just close it. Like it's done. It's a done deal, you know?
Everybody is so excited for this news, myself included. I mean, it only makes sense that he's going to be reprising his role. Again, if you remember Daredevil, Ben Affleck played him a long time ago, and he was quite interesting. I mean, I think it's more part of our childhoods rather than an integral part of our, MCU or Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of journey. He's cool. He was interesting, but
too edgy, in my opinion.
I mean, it makes sense. Daredevil is kind of edgy. His name is Daredevil, for God's sake. And even Elektra, Jennifer Garner as Elektra, they were fantastic. I cannot. I'm gonna fangirl right now.
Remember the music in Daredevil? Was it "Wake Me Up"?
Was it?
Wait, I don't know.
I don't remember.
It was something else.
I was probably 6 years old, Mikhail.
It was like this very edgy music as well. Daredevil. It is certainly a legacy movie, but I don't think we'll see Ben Affleck in that.
Oh no, especially since I think that he might want to reprise his role, maybe as Batman, especially since there's lots of speculation as to what's happening.
Oh, he will. That's for sure. There's reports that confirm that.
There's reports, but it's mostly Henry Cavill who has been quite interested to jump back into the Superman role. But Ben, he's kind of been back and forth. But it goes back to the Snyderverse. Is that happening or not? We don't really know. But if it is, most likely he's going to be reprising his role. But let's talk about a little bit of She-Hulk, because according to this piece of story, according to Tatiana Maslany herself, she says or confirms that her She-Hulk is going to be CGI'd. And you might be asking, well, duh, what kind of question is that? But if you look at She-Hulk in the actual comics, you'd see that she, unlike her cousin, she's not like this massive, big, buffy kind of creature. She's still kind of human-sized to an extent. So there was always that question of, will Tatiana just bulk up for this role? But it now makes sense that she probably will not and will have her, her original look.
I imagine she looks sort of like an Amazonian,
So maybe a much taller, much larger, but still kind of human-esque in comparison to the Hulk himself. So it makes sense, but it basically confirms that yes, Tatiana is not gonna bulk up a lot in comparison to a lot of actresses. The way, for example, Brie Larson had to for her role as Captain Marvel. Same goes for Zoe Saldana and so on and so forth. So here is some Marvel news to keep you guys going until we get Spider-Man next week. I cannot believe it's getting this close. Coming up next, let's hype you up about some interesting things happening in Sharjah right here on the Afternoon Karak.
If you liked this episode of Afternoon Karak, drop a like and subscribe.
Pulse 95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.